On the morning of June 14, 2023, the serene neighborhood of Ikoyi, Lagos, woke up to the kind of horror usually reserved for Nollywood films. At exactly 6:45 a.m., a piercing scream shattered the quiet luxury of the Johnson estate. Moments later, a young housemaid was seen sprinting out of the grand mansion of Chief Olumide Adeyemi, covered in blood, her face twisted in pure terror. Within minutes, police sirens wailed through the streets. What they found inside the house would haunt them forever. Chief Adeyemi, one of Lagos' most influential businessmen, was sprawled across the marble floor of his lavish living room, his throat open from ear to ear. Blood pooled beneath his body, staining the pristine white rug beneath him. His wife, Madame Terry Adeyemi, stood motionless in the corner, her silk robe drenched in red. And the housemaid? She was the prime suspect. But as the investigation unraveled, so did a story of deceit, forbidden love, and a deadly conspiracy that no one saw coming. Blessing Okoje had been working as Chief Adeyemi's housemaid for only 6 months. At 23, she was a small-town girl from Benin City, quiet and obedient, grateful for the opportunity to work in such an esteemed household. To those who saw her, she was just another housemaid, one of many young girls who left their villages seeking better lives in Lagos. But Blessing was different. Behind her reserved demeanor, she carried a secret. Chief Adeyemi, the 57-year-old real estate mogul known for his wealth and numerous political connections, had taken a peculiar liking to her. It started with harmless compliments, extra cash here and there, and eventually, invitations to his private quarters when his wife was out of town. At first, Blessing thought it was just his way of being generous. After all, he was known for helping his staff financially. But soon, his touches lingered a little longer. His words became more suggestive, and the money increased substantially. Blessing wasn't naive. She had heard rumors about powerful men like the chief, about how they used and discarded young girls. But she also knew that rejecting a man like him could mean losing everything: the job, the security, and possibly even her safety. So, when he began sending her expensive gifts, a gold bracelet, designer shoes, and eventually an iPhone, she convinced herself it was harmless. It was just admiration, wasn't it? Then came the nights when he called her to his quarters, locking the door behind them. She hated herself for the way her heart pounded, not with excitement, but with fear. Each time she thought about saying no, she remembered the other housemaids who had suddenly disappeared from their jobs without a word. No one talked about them. No one asked where they had gone. And that was when Blessing realized she was trapped. Blessing knew it was wrong. Madame Teresa was kind to her, even gave her extra food and new clothes. But how could she say no to a man as powerful as Chief Adeyemi? Besides, the gifts were too tempting: jewelry, wads of cash, even an iPhone. Then one day, things took a turn. Before we continue, please take a moment to subscribe and turn on the notification bell for more shocking true crime cases. Your support means a lot to us. Thank you. Madame Teresa Adeyemi had been married to the chief for nearly 30 years. A former beauty queen, she was elegant, intelligent, and fiercely protective of her household. Though she kept up appearances, she knew her husband had affairs. It was the price she paid for the wealth and status their marriage afforded her. But when she began noticing how Blessing avoided eye contact and blushed whenever the chief was around, she became suspicious. She said nothing at first. Instead, she watched. One evening, she followed the chief to his study and saw him whisper something to Blessing, slipping a roll of cash into her apron. That was all she needed. That night, she called her trusted friend, a herbalist named Baba Leke, a man known for helping women solve their problems. "Teresa, your husband is playing with fire," Baba Leke warned. "This girl, she is young, naive, but she is not your real problem." "Then who is?" Teresa asked, her voice sharp. "Your husband," Baba Leke said gravely. "He has been involved in things you do not understand." Madame Teresa's heart pounded. She thought she knew all of her husband's secrets, but she was about to discover one that would change everything. Lagos was full of rumors about rich men and their connections to dark practices, but Madame Teresa never thought her husband was one of them. That changed when she began investigating on her own. She checked his phone, dug through his study, and one night followed him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. What she saw made her blood run cold. Chief Adeyemi was involved in money rituals. Inside the dimly lit warehouse, he stood before an altar adorned with skulls, burning candles, and small bottles filled with unknown substances. The air was thick with the pungent scent of burning incense, mixed with something more sinister, the metallic tang of blood. In the flickering candlelight, Madame Teresa could make out a wooden slab in the center of the room, stained dark with old sacrifices. Around him, men in red robes chanted in eerie unison, their voices rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. Some held staffs adorned with strange carvings, while others clutched small clay pots, their contents unknown. Teresa's stomach churned as she watched her husband reach into a box and pull out a live chicken, its frantic squawking muffled by the overwhelming noise of the ritual. Baba Leke had been right. Her husband wasn't just a cheating husband, he was a man willing to sacrifice anything for power. But the real horror was yet to come. As the ceremony reached its climax, one of the robed men gestured toward a wooden door at the far end of the warehouse. Two masked figures stepped forward, dragging a terrified young woman behind them, her hands bound, her mouth gagged. Teresa's breath caught in her throat. The girl was no older than Blessing, and that was when she realized her husband had been doing this for years. When she confronted him that night, he didn't deny it. "This is how we stay rich, Teresa," he said coldly. "You enjoy the lifestyle, don't you? This is the price." Madame Teresa was horrified, but instead of running, she decided to play her own game. If her husband thought he could cheat and sacrifice others for his wealth, she would make sure he paid the ultimate price. The plan was simple but deadly. She knew Chief Adeyemi was planning another ritual soon. She had overheard his conversation with his cult brothers. They needed a fresh body, a young woman, and Madame Teresa knew exactly who he would pick next. Blessing. Instead of warning the girl, she befriended her. She played the role of the understanding wife, offering Blessing her trust. She started treating her like a daughter, bringing her into her confidence, even sharing meals with her in the main dining room, an honor no other housemaid had received. Blessing, unsuspecting and grateful, began to open up, confiding in Madame Teresa about her past, her dreams, and even her fear of Chief Adeyemi's advances. Madame Teresa listened intently, nodding sympathetically, hiding her true intentions behind warm smiles. Then, on the night of the ritual, she made sure Blessing walked into the lion's den. She convinced Blessing that the chief had finally decided to make her his personal assistant, a huge step up from being a housemaid. She even laid out a special dress for her, insisting she looked presentable for the big opportunity. Blessing, excited and unaware, stepped into Chief Adeyemi's private quarters, expecting to be welcomed into a new role. Instead, she found herself face to face with death itself. Chief Adeyemi invited Blessing to his private quarters, telling her he had a special gift for her. But what he didn't know was that his wife had already swapped the ritual potion meant to paralyze Blessing with something else. A deadly poison. As the chief prepared for the ritual, he took a sip of the Blessing wine, expecting it to grant him strength. Instead, he collapsed, his body convulsing violently. Realizing something was wrong, he tried to call for help, but his wife was already standing over him with a dagger in her hand. "You thought you could betray me, Olamide?" she hissed. "You thought I wouldn't find out?" Before he could respond, she slit his throat in one swift motion. Blood sprayed across the room, covering Blessing, who stood frozen in horror. But then came the real twist. Madame Teresa turned to Blessing and whispered, "Run." Terrified, Blessing obeyed. She bolted out of the house, her screams waking the neighborhood. Minutes later, the police arrived to find the scene exactly as Madame Teresa had planned. A dead chief, a blood-soaked housemaid, and a grieving wife who claimed she walked in too late to stop the tragedy. At first, all fingers pointed at Blessing. She was found covered in blood, running from the crime scene. But the story didn't add up. The toxicology report revealed poison in the chief's system, and the murder weapon was found with Madame Teresa's fingerprints. Under police interrogation, Blessing broke down and revealed everything. Madame Teresa, however, remained calm, almost smug. "He was a monster," she said simply, "and monsters deserve to die." With overwhelming evidence, Madame Teresa was arrested, but public opinion was divided. Some called her a murderer. Others saw her as a woman who had freed herself from a dangerous man. Blessing, now a key witness, was placed in protective custody. As for Chief Adeyemi's secret cult, the police uncovered several missing persons cases tied to him. It turned out, Madame Theresa's revenge had not just ended a marriage, it had exposed a dark network operating under Lagos's elite. Today, the Adeyemi mansion remains empty, its legacy tainted by blood and betrayal. Some say the ghost of Chief Adeyemi still roams the halls, seeking vengeance. Others say Madame Teresa, now serving a life sentence, has no regrets. As for Blessing, she disappeared after the trial, perhaps finally free from the horrors of the Adeyemi household. One thing remains certain: in the world of the rich and powerful, secrets don't stay buried for long. And sometimes, the housemaid knows more than she lets on. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more thrilling mysteries. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think really happened in the Adeyemi mansion? Stay tuned for more.